Hi, so this is an analysis of Shut Up and Dance. I do prefer my alternative title, but I can understand why they wouldn't go for it. Yeah, this one was really a shocker. You know, it was really interesting how it revealed everything throughout. And of course, you know, when the other guys kind of like, it was kids, wasn't it? You know, at the end and stuff, I was just, no, not Kenny, no. Yes, Kenny. So yeah, you know, normally I've been quite good at kind of seeing things, but again, as with playtest, you know, I was surprised at the actual end kind of reveal, and same with this. And I respect Black Mirror for that. You know, they're good at layering things in if you know, if you're paying attention to them, and you know, I often do pick up on those kind of things. However, I enjoy being surprised by it. So it was a great episode. So we obviously start out with Kenny, played by Alex Lawther, who does a great job. I believe he's been praised by Dame Judi Dench of all people. You know, basically saying like he's attained a level of talent and skill in acting that, you know, many of her peers have worked their lifetime to achieve. So, you know, you can't get better praise than that. He's done a lot of radio work and a few things here and there, and I do think he's got a promising future. I did wonder where I knew him from. At first I was kind of like, he reminds me of a young Michael McIntyre, which would be a bit weird, you know, just suddenly in the middle of the episode, like, oh, they've found out, oh no. That's my terrible Michael McIntyre impression. I'm sorry. But I did find out that in fact he was a young Alan Turing in The Imitation Game. So of the two options that I've given him, to grow up as Michael McIntyre or as to grow up as Bandersnatch Cummerbund, I'd probably choose the latter. So yeah, very good job. And I do believe that Kenny's meant to have some kind of high functioning autism, you know, whether it's like Asperger's or just some other kind of ASD thing, but I think it is high functioning because of his ability to socially interact to a degree. His family life's not too difficult, but he does have moments of taking things literally, although that is in times of stress, so maybe that could be explained. But his meltdown in the car...
It's not real. This is not real. You can do this. Keep it together. Please hold it together. Shut up! Okay.
Does seem to have more of an element of not a neurotypical response, should we say. So, you know, whether that's meant to be the case or not, that's what I got from it. So, but yeah, so, you know, he's obviously got a job, and like I said, you know, Black Mirror is great at layering things, and this may be over-analysing, but at the start when he hands the toy back to the child who's left it, which I'd completely forgotten about, by the way, for the second viewing that I was taking notes. So, you know, I didn't even think about it, and then I saw it, I was like, oh, wait. Because he's so... the smile on his face is just so... his face lights up. He's so joyed at interacting with a child, which obviously, as we learn later, does make sense. You know, so... I think that was a good bit of foreshadowing, or I'm really overanalyzing throwaway scenes. But I did think it was a great start, you know, great open. And of course his sister seems to be the catalyst. She's downloaded malware seemingly onto both her computer and Kenny's, so she's kind of the reason that he gets found out, you could argue. Now I do believe that some people may be under the impression that whatever she downloaded was what caused the webcam to be accessed and things like that. I don't believe that's the case. With Black Mirror, if they're showing something, it possibly has, you know, it more often than not has some kind of merit, some kind of value, some kind of importance. And the malware killer, if you will, you know, the anti-malware software he goes, you know, the website is clearly shown, and the program's called Shrive. For some reason, this was a strangely familiar word to me. So I looked it up, and it is an archaic word meaning to present oneself for confession, to seek absolution for one's sins. It can also mean the act, the priest giving that confession as well. And as I say, it's an archaic word, so why did I know it? I don't know. I still can't, to this day, figure out where I came across it. But I did find that quite interesting, the fact that what happens is, they receive confession even if it's non-consensual. Someone knows of the things they've done that they're not happy about, that they don't want people to know about. And of course, with a confession, the priest, it is meant to be confidential. So they are then tasked with acts of contrition, you might say, to absolve themselves of those sins, to have those sins forgiven and forgotten. And forgiven and forgotten, I think, is the key word to lead into my next point, because they do seem a bit Anonymous-esque, this group of people. They perhaps take some of the early days of the Anonymous ethos, if you will, where it's kind of a bit pranky, like, with the troll face at the end. Because that's how they started. It was pranks, but they started realising that they could use their powers for good, But of course, that we do not forgive, we do not forget, does kind of play out. It's like, yeah, okay, we'll make it go away if you do all these things for us. No, we won't. Don't be silly. So I do think it is meant to be perhaps an anonymous parallel. Now, with the access that they have into the phones, obviously they have access to the GPS, and I do think that they perhaps timed it. So when he's just getting into work, they'd have probably figured out where he works and stuff. That would be easily found, I'm sure. So, they're like, right, he's there now. Activate him. Make it awkward. Make it difficult. It does seem to really correlate with their sort of MO, I guess. And, he obviously has to go and get somewhere really quickly, and you find out that, he's not the only one. I mean, obviously, the teaser at the start, shows this woman sort of leaving the car that obviously they later use. So there are these sort of network of people who are being forced, if you will, to do acts to absolve themselves of their sins, which, as I say, doesn't work out. But aside from that, they do seem to have perhaps a network of people who are monitoring, because obviously one of the guidelines, if you will, one of the instructions is don't tell anyone. Now, they may have a way of having the microphone permanently on the phone, but if it's in a pocket, bag, something like that, where it might get muffled, you're not going to hear. So perhaps there are people out there who are keeping tabs on them, because there are a few people with phones throughout, particularly in the lobby as they're leaving the hotel, and Hector obviously moves the car because someone was freaking him out, standing there on the phone.
There was some bloke standing there on his phone freaking me out.
So I think maybe there are field agents who they are using to keep tabs on people, because the GPS will only tell you roughly where they are. It won't tell you anything else, like what they're doing. Are they motioning to someone to say, I'm being controlled, call the police, we can figure out a way to track it. So I do think perhaps there is that in place. But going back to the hotel, obviously that's where we first meet Hector, who at first, doesn't want to let him in, and he's like, what's all this about? But I think this was a great performance. I remember this guy from Soldier, way back when as a squaddie with his mate Robson Green, who later went on to sing together. Many of you will probably first of all go, Sabron. But as I say, to me, he's the squaddie, Jerome Flynn, and he does a really great job of basically being the counterpoint. He's a lot more with it. His head's screwed on. He's very much like, right, we need to do this because I'm not losing my kids. And obviously he gives us one of the best lines in the film, Spurty Magoo.
Tossing the at work, calling you Spurty Magoo, laughing at your face.
That whole speech, it was funny. I'm sorry, it was. Even in context, it was still funny. But I did find that, quite an interesting counterpoint for Kenny to play off. There's the possibly high-functioning autism, unable to deal with the stress, kind of guy in the situation, and then you've got the guy who's like, right, focus, get on with it. Who, whilst he's harsh at times, it's a kind of necessary evil, if you will. He's pushing him so that they can get through this together. They can make this work. They can get to the other side and survive and be forgiven. And I thought it was great. So when we learn, obviously, that inside that box is a cake, I did think, is this going to get a bit heisty? Like Prison Break. I didn't expect it to be a kind of Raoul Duke, Hunter S. Thompson style costume almost. Those glasses always mean that to me. I wasn't perhaps expecting exactly what it was, and the gun obviously as well. I wasn't expecting that, but I thought there was something in there that was going to inform whatever happened next. So, obviously they go, and there's this sort of humorous interaction as well with the person that Hector knows. And obviously, sort of racing to get her to where she wants to go, because obviously they can't tell her what's going on, and the sort of additional... I mean, it was almost a level of perhaps it's manufactured tension, but it was an interesting sort of sidebar, and obviously, going through with the robbery. I did feel very sorry for him, sort of when he just whacked himself. It's a very stressful situation and totally understandable. He's not there because he's like someone who's gone to themselves, I need to rob a bank and get a load of money. He's just doing what he has to, because otherwise his secret's out, And obviously then we, like I said before, we get to the conclusion where we realise why it was such a problem, and of course, that no one was actually getting away with it. Although it seems to be that everyone is revealed at the same time. It was almost like, right, we've got like a bunch of people, now let's mess everyone's life up in one fell swoop, which is weird to me. The idea, like, some people would have theoretically then been living with a full sense of security for a while, and I don't know why it was done that way. It's the impression we're given that it's all about the same time. But there is one sort of final couple of points really that I want to make, sort of about, I mean, that whole sort of montage, if you will, to a song by one of my favourite bands ever, sort of Radiohead's exit music for a film. It was great, it was really well done, and I do feel that the other paedophile, let's call a spade, almost got away perhaps much lighter than Kenny did, because he hasn't got to live with all that kind of thing. Kenny's going to be arrested, probably convicted, and imprisoned, what have you, and even to this day, anything involving kids in prison, they will eat you alive, and he doesn't seem like he's got the strength of character to deal with that. You know what I mean? I do think he's likely to end up actually as a suicide. So, it's almost like the other guy did get away lightly. Yes, obviously he's been beaten to death, one can assume, by the fact that Kenny survives and is walking on his own later. But he did perhaps get off lighter than Kenny did, because Kenny's got all that fallout to deal with. He's just dead. He hasn't to deal with that. So I don't know. That's just a weird sort of downer to end on. I mean, to be honest, that's how the episode does end. It is a downer, because even in spite of what he's done, we are led through this tale by Kenny. He's our main focus, and through engendering a kind of sympathy for him, a sort of sympathy for the devil, if you will, we really feel for him, even though we know that it was kids. I don't think I'm alone in that. I think that's what a lot of people take away from this episode. They feel almost dirty by association for cheering on the paedophile. So it's quite heavy, when you start to sort of break it down and think about your own feelings with it. And that's, again, when a Black Mirror episode is great. It's one of the things I love about the series. So, we're going to carry on. Next week, we have another episode that was surprising. Let's put it that way. So until then, as always, take care.